When I was 23, I'd built a business that had made over $180,000, but I ended up keeping none of it. What went wrong?
2 years earlier, I'd graduated with a computer science degree. I didn't have any money, and most of my course mates went straight into $50,000 a year jobs as software developers. But I didn't want that life. I wanted freedom and flexibility. I'd just spent $60,000 getting a degree, but I didn't want a normal job. I couldn't stand the thought of becoming an insignificant cog in someone else's business while doing nothing ambitious myself. So I had no choice. I had to start my own business, and I needed to make enough money to pay my bills, $2,000 a month. But the question remained, what business? So I started searching online for ways to make money, and that's where I found Airbnb arbitrage. You rent a property and run it as an Airbnb. Guests come and stay and pay per night, and you make enough money to both pay the rent for the property and have extra money left over after that. That's the idea, but is it really possible to make money doing this? I wanted to find out for myself. So I learned as much as I possibly could about Airbnb arbitrage. I read every book I could find. I subscribed to a bunch of YouTube channels, and then I packed up and I moved to a busy city to start the business. I found 2 apartments that I could rent to then run as Airbnbs, and I paid the non-refundable deposits to take them off the market using the last of my cash. Why? To force myself to make this work, but now I had a problem. I still had to pay for a bunch of stuff, like the first month's rent on each apartment, the damage deposits, and all the stuff that you need to put in an Airbnb to make it a nice place to stay. How would I pay for it all? If I didn't come up with the rest of the money, I'd lose what I'd already put down, I'd be out of options, and the business would be over before it had even started. I had to find a solution. And then I remembered Brad. Like me, Brad wanted to start an Airbnb arbitrage business, and he had money, but he didn't have any time. And meanwhile, I had a bunch of time, but no money. So I gave him a call. We met up at a Starbucks. I bought a $5 coffee, to obscure my, not desperation, but yeah, desperation. I told Brad all about my ambition for the business and about the 2 apartments that I'd got, and 1 hour later, we'd gone into business together. He believed in me. I couldn't tell you why. I could not tell you why.
You had the work ethic and you were smart. You went around things in a way that got stuff done.
Brad invested $40,000 for me to use to get our Airbnb business off the ground. And I could have just withdrawn that money and gone off to Mexico straight away. And that is exactly what I did. Just kidding. I worked tirelessly for weeks to turn those 2 apartments into nice Airbnbs. I'd hired a housekeeper, but I still had to prove that I'd made the right decision doing this instead of getting a normal job. Would these Airbnbs actually make money? People were booking stays and things were running smoothly for about 2 weeks when one morning I got a call from my housekeeper. Some guests had stolen all the expensive stuff that I'd just bought. How had this happened? Was it just bad luck? I was angry. Angry at the thieves and angry at myself for letting this happen. I'd only just started the business and I'd already messed up, but I didn't let this knock my confidence. Giving up was the last thing on my mind, so I called Brad to tell him what happened.
I wasn't overly concerned because it happened, done it. You dealt with it and it was dealt with the same day.
Then not long after, some different guests decided to throw a party, damaged a bunch of stuff that I had to replace again. I couldn't let this happen again. If I didn't stop bad guests from booking, more things would get stolen and damaged, we'd keep losing money, and my mission to start a successful Airbnb business would be over. What could I do? I got this smart home sensor that detects things like noise, motion, and temperature. All things that increase when a lot of people go into a small space, like into one of our apartments for a party. Let's turn this thing on and see if it alerts us when a party's about to start. The sensor should tell us if we have bad guests, but how do we stop bad guests from booking in the first place? Security deposits. Alright, so there's a $400 security deposit on top of that, and you get that back at the end of your stay. Yeah, no problem, mate, all good. Do you take card? Yep, we take card. Yeah, so there's a $400 security deposit. The listing didn't say anything about a deposit. Actually, if you just look at the top of the... Look, mate, you can do one if you think I'm paying a deposit.
They didn't want to lose their money when they either damaged stuff or threw parties. Noise alert.
Disco.
I wanted one more layer of protection to stop us getting robbed again. ID checks. Now the last step is just to upload some ID and then your booking will be all sorted. Of course, no problem. The last thing you need to do is just upload some ID to the link. What do you need ID for? Yeah, sure. We asked for ID just so we know who's staying in our properties. Hello?
So once I started doing all this stuff, we never had another theft or party again. And just as things were starting to go well again, I got a little slap from the universe.
I'd parked my car near to the apartments just to quickly go in and check something, and I was in there for literally a few minutes. And when I came back out, I heard the sound of glass smashing.
I'd left my backpack in the car, and suddenly I saw a guy riding past right in front of me on a bike with my backpack over his shoulder. Darn. But I didn't let that break my spirit.
We were making a small profit each month from the 2 apartments, and the future of the business was looking bright. The immediate future for me personally, however, wasn't looking so bright. The business wasn't making enough profit for us to justify taking any money out as income, but I did have bills, and I was going into debt to pay them. I'd already taken on $60,000 of debt to get a degree that I wasn't using to get a good job, and now I was going further into debt. Would this business ever make money? Was I doing the right thing?
Anything that's get rich and quick doesn't go together in business. Everything's just slow burn, slow build.
I needed to expand the business by getting more properties, and fast. But how?
I went back to Emily, the agent who'd rented me the first 2 apartments. I asked her if she had anything else that might be suitable.
And she was like, nah.
But then 3 months later, she reached out to me saying that she had one apartment that had just become available that might be suitable.
Boom. And that was Airbnb number 3. And now we just needed Emily to rinse and repeat that exact same thing 10, maybe 20 times, and we'd have a proper business. So was Emily the answer? No. She quit the real estate business pretty much immediately after we worked together.
So I went back to what I did when I got the first 2 apartments. I cold called hundreds of property owners. Pretty much everyone said no. I started to think, did I just get lucky with the first 2 apartments?
And then luck turned against me once again, because out of nowhere, the owner of the first 2 apartments decided that he wanted to rent to just normal tenants instead of to my business. 2 months later, we were kicked out and we were back down to 1 Airbnb.
But even with all these setbacks, I wasn't going to give up. I was more determined than ever to make the business a success and to prove that I'd made the right decision not getting a normal job. I started running ads on Google. I learned as much as I possibly could about Google ads, and that seemed to work. Property owners started coming to me. Was paid advertising the secret I'd been looking for?
I spent $7,000 on the ads over 7 months, and 4 of those ended up being suitable.
Hello, it's John from Passive Property.
But then 2 of those properties ended up falling through. With one, water literally fell through from the roof and caused a load of damp immediately after I'd just spent 2 weeks and thousands of dollars setting it up as an Airbnb. I could not catch a break. I did get 2 apartments up and running from doing the ads, but that wasn't enough to justify the $7,000 that I had to spend to get them. Paid ads weren't the answer.
Everything I'd tried so far hadn't worked. I still wasn't earning any income, and I'd gone much further into debt during all this to pay my own bills. I needed more properties. But how?
Then, one day, I had a revelation. Instead of renting properties, we could just buy them. Brad had money, and we also knew other investors who wanted to work with us. We'd never get kicked out, and we wouldn't have expensive rents to pay. I spent months viewing properties, crunching numbers, making offers.
Before I realized that there was no chance we were getting a property at anywhere near a price that made sense. No one wanted to move during the pandemic, but people still wanted to buy. So every property was selling for way above what it was actually worth. And it just didn't make good business sense for us to pay over the odds. So buying wasn't the answer either.
I'd been working my butt off trying to grow the business for almost 2 years, but the $2,000 a month income that I needed still seemed so far out of reach. And even though the business had brought in over $180,000, each property was only making a small profit. Sometimes they even lost money.
Did I want to risk more of my time trying, or would I be better off doing something else?
I talked to Brad, and we agreed to sell the business. We found a buyer who wanted to continue building on the foundations that I'd built. Brad got back the money that he'd invested, plus some extra, and I got $26,000. Quitting isn't always a bad thing, and sometimes it's the best thing you can do for yourself, because there's an opportunity cost to continuing with something that isn't progressing.
Our effort and time could have been spent in any other practical business, and we could have made, between our 2 minds, a good net profit.
I'd been going into debt while running the business to pay for my own bills, so every last cent of my $26,000 went to repaying those debts.
But things are finally going well. I've got momentum, I'm earning an income from YouTube, and I'm loving every moment of it. You can unlock some cool stuff using my Patreon link down in the description. Watch this video next. I put a lot of work into all of my videos, and I'm sure you'll like it.